How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk. I make music as AfroDJMac. And today I'm sitting down for a conversation with John Holt. John, how you doing?
I'm very well, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much for taking the time to be on. I've been enjoying your work lately at the Audio Journey. So, if people aren't sure where you're coming from, you've got a really nice YouTube channel about the title you got is Making Music Production Accessible to All. And it's called The Audio Journey. And it's really nice. Lots of great videos, really practical tips. So I'm super pumped to have you here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So, the YouTube channel, I guess, is kind of like your home in a lot of ways, where you do a lot of the work out of, it seems to me.
Definitely. That is definitely my core or pillar platform. And it's the place where I think I'm able to share the most sort of valuable content. And as I'm sure we'll sort of dive into, but yeah, that's where I have focused on building an audience. And that's where I feel like I'm able to help people best, really, in that sort of longer video form content.
Nice. Yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into all this, anything that's interesting that you think we'll find entertaining.
Definitely. Well, I'm 22 years old at the moment, and I'm just about to finish my degree in audio recording and production. So I study here at the University of Hertfordshire, which is just north of London in the UK. And I was lucky enough to also have a placement year in between my second and third year working for Focusrite Innovation. So that was an awesome experience. And yeah, that's been my last few years. But I started off making music because I was just obsessed with gigs, absolutely obsessed with going to see live bands, as I think a lot of people do. Around the age of 18, 17 is when I started to really get into that side of things. And when I had to pick what I wanted to do, I originally picked sports science to do to come to university, that's what I did throughout most of school. But then I discovered music at the age of about, as I say, I was always into music, but 16, 17, started going to gigs and just absolutely loved it. So I was like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. And I came to university with the idea of wanting to be in a band. And I was like, if I can get a job in a studio, I can be around bands and be around that kind of scene. And I'll probably have more chance of getting into it that way. So that's really why I wanted to study music production initially. I'm so glad that I sort of approached it with an open mind, and everything that we got given to do opened up a new area of interest. And what I initially wanted to do is completely flip now. It's and I think that's the same talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You rarely see someone that comes in and says, I want to do this, and they just have a tunnel vision sort of path towards that. So, and I'm so grateful for that. There's so many things that I've been sort of introduced to that have been awesome. But started the channel in January 2017. After teaching my brother a little bit of music production on the side, and realizing that it might have a little bit of a bigger audience.
Nice. Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people wind up, starting off in one direction, and then next thing you know, that turns come up, obstacles, changes in plans, and you wind up in a totally different place. I started playing guitar, and I always thought I wanted to be in bands touring. And, did a little bit of that on a very, small scale, but, and don't get me wrong, I loved it, but I'm also a little bit of a homebody. I like to stay home and, just hang out and, I like that. And, sometimes I don't always want to be out and around like large crowds. And,
Definitely.
it's funny how you start to, I guess it's as your life and your personality starts to unfold, you start to realize, some of the realities of what your dreams and visions actually are, because it's not the snapshots all the time you see, or the little video clips, or Instagram posts. There's always a lot of other stuff behind that.
100%.
What did you said you wanted to be in a band? Were you playing an instrument at the time?
So I played guitar to a very amateur level. I was sort of self-taught from tabs, and it was mainly like the bands that I was going to see. I'd be like, that's awesome. Like I would love to be. Um, I think the way that I phrased it to myself was a lazy rhythm guitarist that writes songs, which was
Nice.
sort of what I wanted to do. So I love doing that. I think there's still a little bit of me inside that would absolutely love to be able to write songs, play guitar, like be a front man. And I would like to do that, but less with the aspiration towards being like a famous musician and frontman, but more towards like the creative process of writing and expressing yourself through that means is a really appealing thing to me. But yeah, a little bit of guitars, a little bit of drums, but never anything to a particularly high level, really. Just enjoyed it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you can do a lot with just like a basic ability and playing with some other band members. You can, like you said, the lazy rhythm guitarist is cool. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if like you're kind of into like the writing the songs stuff.
Definitely. No, it's been really good fun. But how about was yourself? Was it just guitar or?
Yeah, it was initially guitar. I mean, I was 14, just turned 14 when I picked up a guitar for the first time. My best friend he'd moved away, came back, and he was playing guitar, and he showed me Enter Sandman by Metallica. And I, at that point, like literally never considered the fact that if I had a guitar, I could learn the songs I was listening to on the radio. I mean, it just didn't know that. And it sounds so funny to think about now, but I guess just for 14 years of my life, I never thought about that until I was actually shown how to do it. And it kind of just blew a door wide open for me, where I was just fascinated and interested and excited, and I had something to do with it too at the same time. And yeah, but then it was playing in bands with friends. Got into recording really fast, really early, just because I wanted to record ideas, or I wanted to play a rhythm track to practice my soloing over, like my pentatonic scales and things like that. So it started just building off of that, from like, just a cheap tape recorder to hooking karaoke machines together to do like a weird like multi-track thing, and then 4 tracks and so on and so forth. But that was always
awesome.
a part of it I really enjoyed, was putting the music together.
Definitely. Some of the fondest memories for myself are definitely those like times in my bedroom, like miking up a little practice amp horrendously or plugging directly in. And I remember like I wanted some drumstick sort of clicks at the start of one of my songs. So I was recording like drumsticks, like hitting them together in my bedroom to put that at the start of the song. It's just like fun stuff like that. But yeah, no, that sounds like a cool way into it.
Yeah, just for like the sound of a drummer. Like, you mean like, yeah.
Well, just to like when drummers like introduce a song, it was on a couple of songs that I liked. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'd like record those drumstick hits and like just silly stuff like that. It was really good fun.
Yeah, there's like a certain energy, like anticipation, like, oh, here we go. The counting's starting, something's coming up.
Probably far too much reverb on there and like
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's like something you have to do in the beginning, is just learn to like overuse and abuse your effects until you learn some art of subtlety.
Exactly.
It's hard to learn, yeah. Yeah, I've got a lot of like drenched recordings and a lot of distortion, a lot of reverb, all at the same time, just turn everything up until it's red.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Not redlining, you're not headlining.
I like that. It sounded a little better on the cassette tape days, though.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome what you've built for the audio journey. You've got a great following over the course of a year, and I'm very interested just to ask you, as somebody that works on building followings and putting material out there. How'd you go about that? How did you start building that?
Awesome. No, in fact, I really appreciate the kind words. It's I've been really, really lucky to be able to do it, and I came across some really good content when I was starting out. But the reason that I started the channel, I sort of touched on it, but early to mid 2016, I was looking for some ways to sort of like supplement my income online as a student. Obviously, that's times can be tough there. So a quote that really, really resonated with me that I found in this sort of search online was, if you want to start making money online, stop trying to make money online. Which really resonated. It was, the gist of it was sort of, find what you're good at and how you can add value to people, and that's how you're going to get value from any sort of online exchange in the long term. Like there's these like cryptocurrencies and stuff now, obviously, but if you want to build something of meaning, like focus on getting good at something, or if you're good at something, share that with the world. So I was in the second year of my degree. I was starting to get the hang of like the basics of DAWs and making basic tracks. And simultaneously, I was teaching my younger brother, who's a DJ, how to make his own music. So as a DJ, as you know, like it's important now to be able to make your own stuff, because a signing can catapult you to bigger bookings and really sort of kickstart your career. So
Right.
I was teaching him just the basics of Ableton over Skype, kind of like this, with a bit of screen sharing. And he was really gaining something from that. And it was sort of lighting that little spark of like, okay, so that's how these tracks are made. And I got such a buzz out of sort of something that was so basic to me, which was like, you put a kick drum into a sampler, you put the notes on these beats, and that's how you get the kick drum. It's like, oh, okay. And those kind of like, seeing those like aha moments in people was really, really satisfying. So I started making videos in about May or June 2016. And it took me so long to actually release anything. It wasn't until like 6 or 7 months later. And this is something I think you spoke about in your last episode, like just get started, just put it out there. Like now is the time to start. There's no someday is this like dangerous disease that's just going to cause you to never start. So in the end, I was just like, you know what, this is good enough. I'm going to put it out. And I launched with a video series called The 7 Key Elements of Music Production, which just took basic things like what's audio, what's MIDI, what's a sampler, what's a synth, mixing and mastering, just in really basic terms without jargon. And they weren't amazing videos, but I think they got those points across in a way that wasn't kind of snobby and wasn't like, you need to know this if you're going to do this. Like you're not going to get anywhere if you don't know this and this. It's like, just be patient, friendly, like what I would have wanted if I was starting. And with building an audience in terms of following, you just got to think of YouTube in the context that it is, which is a search engine. So
right.
That's been something that I really consider carefully with titles and thumbnails and stuff. Like people go onto YouTube for a reason in terms of music production and tutorials and how-tos and stuff. So that's the way I try to approach titles and whatnot. And the content really, because obviously the content's got to back up the titles. So I try and picture what John 4 or 5 years ago would have been looking for and try and make the best content I can around that really. So yeah, that's pretty much how I went about starting.
I love the quote, if you want to start making money online, stop trying to make money online. Do you know where you heard that? Is that attributed to anyone?
I can't. It's definitely something that I saw somewhere and really resonated, but I should remember the author because I've held it in my heart for so long. But I'll try and find that, and I'll let you know if I can find
a lot of great wisdom just kind of goes out, and it doesn't almost matter who said it. But it is true, and it's funny because I had a similar experience getting started myself with actually putting content online. I did, I do a lot of writing anyway, so I wanted to write about making music, just kind of what I was doing, like keep a blog. This was like, I guess, 2011. And I've been putting out music, but, it's like, no one cares. It just goes out there and like, you're working, sweating, and you get to that moment where you're at the gate and you release it, and it's like, you look around. Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't until I started putting out like just Ableton Live instruments and presets. And that was kind of just, like you said, like it was just, I wasn't charging anyone for anything. It was just to put it out there. And it's funny how like once you just kind of put something out there, all of a sudden it starts to it's like the more you give, the more you get kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
generosity just comes back around. And it's a weird, ironic thing to say, like, you got to stop trying with the hard sale or that kind of look, and just let the stuff happen kind of naturally by just being generous, giving away, sharing.
definitely. I couldn't agree more. And it's something that one of my favorite kind of influences in this space, Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, talks about quite a lot. Um, is 51-49 is the way that he puts it. Always
Yes.
give more than you're expecting in return, and that's been huge. And um, we did a presentation like here at uni, and it was about like effectively marketing yourself on social media. And I wanted to try and make an impact because I know people get bored in those kind of things so easy. So I was like,
Huh.
I opened with a statement: "No one gives a." Sorry, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah. Oh,
It
yeah,
was
yeah. Go ahead.
no one gives a shit about you,
Hmm.
basically. Um, they care about what you can do for them. So if you want to capture people's attention, then you've got to be of some sort of value to them, whether it's entertainment, escapism, or information. They're not going to be interested otherwise. Like, put in your latest SoundCloud link out saying, go and listen, go and subscribe, go and follow. It's like,
Yeah. What?
cool. Like, if I know you, then maybe I'll go and check it out because you're a good friend. But otherwise, like, you're not really going to grow outside that circle without
Yeah.
doing something a little bit different. So
Yeah. I think that's the least productive thing to do. It's just like, hey, I made a song, go listen, check it out. Like,
exactly.
why? you know, uh, my 4 minutes are valuable, man. And
Exactly.
but like giving something, and then maybe it'll come back. I mean, that was like kind of an inspiration for me. Is like when I was learning how to do a lot of my, I was early, I guess. Well, actually, like it was. Probably like mid to late 2000s. I was trying to learn Logic and I was watching a lot of videos on YouTube. It was kind of new still to be learning anything on YouTube. And I realized I was starting to listen to some of the artists who were teaching me. They'd have their
Mhm.
examples of music because they would be, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'd go check it out, like get the album. And I was like,
Mm.
it's funny how like they're just giving stuff away, but now it's brought me in their world. And yeah,
And
the 51-49 is a great principle. I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan too, and I have his name written down here because I saw on your Instagram there's a picture of you with him at that K Swiss. I want to ask you about that while we're on the topic. What was that about? Because like I'm. We had just set up the date to do the podcast, and I'm scrolling through. I'm like, "What's this?" John's with Gary V. Like, what's going on? Is he gonna cancel on me now?
that was such an amazing day. So he launched his sneaker to celebrate the release of Crushing It, his
Mhm.
latest book, and he rarely comes over to London. And if he does, I'll see it on like his daily vlog like 3 days later and be like, "Damn, I should have been waiting at the tube station" or something like. But he announced that he was doing this like meet and greet and whatnot. So I was like, I've got to get down there. And yeah, so I was there from like 8 a.m. till like midnight, I think. He met him during the day, but met loads of cool people, sort of hung around in London. But it was just so cool to meet him. I was like um, shaking like a little fangirl when I was going up there. I was like, Gary, man. And yeah, I just wanted to try and get a little bit of wisdom out of him in terms of like, he really lit a fire under me in terms of getting me to do the YouTube stuff.
Mhm.
And I wanted to try and get like 10 or 15 seconds of that for my Instagram followers. So I got him to do a little story and just say like why it's such a good time to be making music, because I believe that it is. And he's obviously on board with that, hangs around with a lot of rappers as well and is quite into that scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was super cool. How long have you been following Gary for?
Almost maybe a year or so.
Mhm.
Maybe even a little bit less. My older brother told me about him. He does real estate. And
Okay.
we kind of like, he's trying to do something a little different too. And like he's got a website. He's really and his principle is the same thing. He's just supplying information about the communities that he's servicing. And it's not a hard sale. It's just like his idea is like, I want you to come to my site to find out what the neighborhoods are like and what's
Mhm.
going on around there. And then, if you are interested, maybe you'll come see me, but it's not a sale. It's just a service he's providing. And it's very much like that. So we're always like kind of trading, thoughts and ideas people were into. I'm like, you got to check out Tim Ferriss. You got to check out, he says, check out
100%.
Gary Vee. So we like kind of did some nice trading there on just some useful resources. But I'm always amazed at his just prolific content. He is out there all the time, every day, something coming up. He's always in your face. It's incredible. Like his presence is just. I'm pretty sure there's a couple Gary V's cloned running around doing all this stuff.
It is absolutely mind-boggling the amount of content that he puts out. And he talks to these people and he says like, you need to be posting like 5-6 times a day on Instagram. It's like that's crazy, but he's doing it, like he's backing it up, and he
Yeah.
has done for years. And it's crazy to see, and it's his energy is just infectious, like
Yeah.
absolutely infectious. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's always good for a nice little kick in the ass when I need to get going on something. But his idea is just great. He shares everything. He's not hiding any secrets, and that's something I really like. Really found important early on, and a lot of the people I was learning from is they were willing to share the secrets. And there's so many people in music, you got the secret like plug-in or FX chain or some secret thing like they don't want to share. But I found that like the people that are sharing that are really doing a nice service. And I found for myself too, it kind of like forces me to come up with new secrets because, if I'm going to make like a cool instrument and then I give it away, now I'm like, all right, that I can't rely on that. That can't be my secret sauce, um, because I think it's very easy in music to have ideas become precious, things become precious, where you're like, oh, that's my riff and I can't ever let it, it's like when you're willing to like kind of, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like when things become that precious, it sort of takes the power away from you. It's not
Mhm.
you anymore. It's this technique, it's this riff, it's this amp setting, it's this plugin, whatever. And as soon as you start letting go of that and you say, no, I'll give that away and I'll come up with something cool tomorrow, it becomes really empowering. And it's you are the one with the ability now, not the device or whatever technique it is, the mic placement, the secret, whatever it is. So I
Def-
think he's really valuable with that. And he's funny how he's like, I'm telling you because I know most of you aren't going to do it.
exactly that. Exactly that. No, I resonate a lot with that kind of thing, and I'd never thought about it in the way that you just put it. Actually, that's really a really good way to think about it. Is like you can picture someone like being really protective over this like certain thing, and then someone stumbles across it, and that guy's like, "Oh God, like what do I do now?" Like, but
Right.
you mentioned in a previous episode as well about the War of Art, which
Yes.
has been one of my favorite reads of recent times, of just approaching creativity in like a professional way. But like, it's not up to you; it's up to the muses. Like, if you're showing up and you're putting in your diligence, then that kind of stuff's going to come through. Like, and applying that and the 5149 kind of thing, I think is a really nice way to do music production. And with tutorials, like there's nothing that I know about Ableton that's not on the internet, that's not online, that hasn't been taught in a tutorial elsewhere. It's just my perspective. I want to share it, and it almost helps me really. And that's something that really resonated with me. What that you shared actually, it's that you have been doing these podcasts to sort of verbalize ideas and talk through things and get different perspectives. And that definitely comes through in my videos as well. It forces me to, if I'm doing a video on multiband compression, it's like, right, you need to know the ins and outs of this and like why you'd use it, actually have examples that will be useful to people, and not just like rely on the manual or something. And yeah, it really does push you to be better, really.
I absolutely agree. And I think that a lot of us really do a lot of our thinking through talking. And I've learned this through my relationships.
Okay.
I can look back to my earlier days and being a not very understanding boyfriend, and trying to just where someone has a problem and they want to talk it through, and I immediately jump to solution. Here's what you can do. Try this, and that's not really what they want. They don't want that. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be validated, and I think that really applies not just to relationships, but it applies to a lot of things where we're kind of sorting our thoughts out by talking to each other and trying to make sense of that by just getting the words out there. So I find it, yeah, it's like super helpful that way in understanding stuff. And sometimes I think it's just like a teaching style thing. Some people just really vibe with the way you deliver, and some people really vibe the way with that person delivers. And there's enough people out there learning it, and I can't tell you how many concepts, like say take something like compression, where I've studied it from a million different angles, but it's you just gotta keep like dealing with it and working with it because it's kind of like an art that you never really fully master, and it's just keeps getting like more and more subtle the more, and you just really so I think it's there's value to it, and sometimes a lot of the great wisdom like that we come across is not something like no human has ever said before, but it's just that
Absolutely.
reverberation of it is useful as a reminder even.
Hugely. And it's something that you mentioned Tim Ferriss. He's massive on journaling.
Yes.
Um, and that's something I've been doing with my music production sessions recently, actually. But um, what you've just described there, like, perfectly illustrates it. Like, if I've set an intentions before a session and then I reflect on how it went, um, I you'll come up with an insight like, okay, maybe I was doing just coming up with bass ideas today, and I had like 7 context drum loops in there. It's like I was coming up with some really nice really nice bass patterns, sorry, but they just weren't fitting until I changed the loops. So my little insight would be, okay, maybe I could have a bass that sounds really good, but just isn't fitting. I just need to try some different drums with it or something like that. And they're the little insights that you pick up, certainly at the start as well. And I think in more complex ways moving forward, um, that are just so valuable that if you don't have that like reflection,
Yeah.
or in talking to someone else or self-reflection, then it's not really, you do miss out on some valuable insights, I think.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really important thing to like think about and analyze your process and what you've done. And the reflection process is huge. I do it with writers when I'm teaching writing. Like you have to write about your writing and think about what you did. And to take it back to the sports science that you said you were almost involved in.
Mm.
I mean, the team will watch the tape of the game, or the boxer will watch the match that already happened. And it's not because maybe I'll win this time at the end. It'll be different. It's to really pick up on like what's working, what's not working, and to come up with new strategies. It's so important. But I do think something like music production, which um, is so often like glorified, and a lot of arts I think are made to be like, oh, it's the divine inspiration. He's touched by the spirit of art or whatever, all that kind of stuff is where we think it's magic almost. And really it's not. It's kind of scientific in a lot of ways. And I love that about Stephen Pressfield is he's kind of like, he kind of smashes that for you. And he's like, no, you're just lying to yourself. You got to get to work. Like, that's what it is.
Absolutely. No, he does deliver some tough love in that book, and it's much needed. And yeah, one of the teachers that I'm currently learning from is a chap over here in the UK called Keith Mills,
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
who, again, an Ableton certified trainer like yourself. Really, really valuable content that he's got.
Yes.
And he teaches that like creativity is a habit. It's not something that some people are blessed with. Like, I got blue eyes and creativity, and you got like brown eyes and you're going to be a good bricklayer kind of thing. It's like you can learn how to be creative. It's by giving yourself the time and space to be creative and getting in the right mindset and that kind of thing. It's definitely not as elusive as people that say like, oh, I'm not really that creative, which is definitely something I've struggled with before. It really is something that you can develop a sort of habit for.
Yeah, I think it is a bit of a muscle in a lot of ways. And I think we're all kind of creative in our own ways, in our own aspects. I mean, we come up with creative decision making and problem solving all the time, in our lives. How are we going to like get around this problem or explain to our boss why we were late? I mean, there's a lot of creativity that goes into some of that stuff. But, and you mentioned the word mindset, and it makes me think of the like fixed and growth mindset,
Yeah.
where if we do tell ourselves, I'm not the creative type, I'm not a handyman, I'm bad at that stuff. But you can learn that. You just have to decide that that's something you can learn, and do the work, and be willing to fail and willing to reflect on that failure so you can make the growth. Instead of it's very easy to get frustrated and just throw your hands up in the air and say this isn't for me, and that's the easy way out. That's and that's kind of like you're off the hook again, it's not your fault. You just weren't made that way.
I couldn't agree more, especially on the growth and the fixed mindset thing. It's one side of that approach is that I'm not creative, and then the other side is like I haven't yet developed a creativity habit, or approaching it as it is possible to learn. And I think one of the biggest advocates for that I've recently come across is a chap called Tom Bilyeu, who runs a YouTube show called Impact Theory. Which it's pretty much replaced TED Talks for me. Like, you get some awesome people on there, like Gary's been on there, like Chase Jarvis, some awesome Tim Ferriss, awesome people, and he really digs in. It's about like a 45-minute to an hour long interview, and his thing was that he always was in jobs that he wanted to be right, so he didn't push himself too hard because he didn't want to be shown up to not know something. But when he switched that, he said, I don't know everything, and they're the situations I want to be in. I'm a quick learner. That's when things really started to grow for him. And he founded the brand Quest Nutrition, that make the protein bars. He's their CEO. So that's what he built, that sort of $1 billion brand, after he switched into that growth mindset, as opposed to this is what I know, I'm going to stay in my comfort zone kind of thing, as opposed to I don't know this yet. Mm-hmm. And that's the key word, really, is yet, and you can grow into it.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing, and it's amazing how early we get those limiting beliefs, where we say those things to ourselves, that we're not good at this, we're not that kind of person. I mean, I'm a high school teacher, and I hear it all the time from 14-year-old kids. It's like, dude, you're 14, man. Like, you've got a lot of road ahead for you to work on stuff. But, and I do blame the educational system a lot. I think it does like kind of put people in these like, they'll just say like, I'm not smart. But you're just not good at school now, right now. And you're struggling with that. But like, it's so damaging, to have that voice in your head telling you you're not a smart person. I mean, you might as well be getting beat up every day. It'd probably be better for you than listening to that. Seriously, like, than to have to hear yourself say that to you, and it goes unheard by other people. There's no one that can jump in and correct it. That's a lot to listen to, and I think we do that to ourselves a lot.
Hugely.
I know. Hugely. I do. I mean, I think about it, and sometimes I have to catch myself, and sometimes it takes some like moment of revelation to be like, oh wow, I've been telling myself something that I should not be saying to myself for a long time. I'm meaner to myself than I would ever be to my worst enemy.
Definitely. Like, waking up to that sort of like realization has definitely been helpful, actually, like directly to music production for me, because like you say, you do just have that like on repeat, like on a loop. I'd like my tracks sound like everyone else's, or something along those lines, or like sound design just isn't for me. But I something that has hugely helped me, that I try not to get too preachy about, but meditation and like mindfulness has
Yeah.
been huge in just like being able to catch myself, and like challenge that kind of limiting belief, because it's not true. At the end of the day, like it might be your current situation, but it's not like a death sentence. It's not like a lifelong thing that you have to live with. Like, say, if you approach it with a growth mindset. So like being self-aware and like catching yourself in those moments of, if you're just starting out, it's like, I don't have the time for this, or like I'm not creative or techie enough. It's like, no, just flip that. Just say, what if I'd spend a bit of time getting to grips with the techie side of it, or spend some time listening to more music to get a bit more sort of creative juices flowing, and that kind of thing. And yeah, it can definitely lead to some surprising places, and definitely has done for me.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the meditation thing. It's probably worth getting preachy over, because it's so important to think about how you think. And I have it all the time. And one of my favorite enemies in my brain is this like thought, like I'm not a real adult or something. Like I'm gonna get
Okay.
caught one day, like I've got like a lot of grown up responsibilities, and
Mm.
it's like one day someone's gonna slip in and be like, "Whoa, wait a minute, you've been fooling us for so long. You're not legit. You're not capable of handling this stuff." And then, like, it manifests itself in like a lot of like self doubt, anxiety, and stress over like the things
Mm.
I have to do, and it's really damaging. And I've been able to kind of pay attention and realize through different forms of meditation. I don't think it's always sitting on your butt, in the lotus position with your thumb and forefinger touching. But it's, I mean, that can be helpful too, to just stop and not be doing anything, but just being present. But I get it a lot out of like yoga, exercise, a lot of these things that stress the body.
Mhm.
Music does it too, of course. But where you can kind of just say, "Oh, there's that thing going on in my head again," and I got to just remember, I'm about to go down that slippery slope. Let's just realize what's really happening here. It's just that downward spiral starting, and then you can recognize it and let it go.
100%.
Sometimes it's not always easy, but to have those like thoughts plaguing you is really difficult, and it can really mess you up in a lot of ways. So I mean, I feel that a lot, and I think that's so important. And I think journaling is a good way to like be aware of what's going on in your head. This podcast is helpful for me. Again, to just sort things out. I start out a lot of times with just some notes, and then I just go through them and just see where it takes me. Sometimes I have to just scrap it because it's not really worth putting out. Probably some listeners will tell you that I don't do that often. I just put it out. But it is a good process to just be aware. Self-awareness, that's huge. That's another Gary Vee thing too, I believe.
That's a massive Gary Vee thing, yeah.
Self-awareness.
Definitely. No, that it's something that I would I'd recommend to a lot of people. As I say, I don't like actively do so, because I know how that can come across in some ways. But Tom Billy, who I just mentioned, is like, no, fuck that. I am going to be that guy. Like, everyone should do this. So there's so much merit to it, and just the idea in meditation. So I do it pretty much every morning, just for like 10-15 minutes. I use an app called Calm that's just or like Headspace does the same kind of thing. And I think of it as like attention training as well, which gave me more of a justification to do it and make it practical. But the idea that you're concentrating on your breath, that's what you're doing wherever you feel it most. And then you're inevitably going to get distracted. And then the act of meditation is catching yourself and bringing your attention back to the breath. And that applies to everything in life. And if you can master that art of catching yourself and then compassionately bringing your attention back, and not being like, damn, like you suck at this, like you should be able to just concentrate on your breath, because that happens so much in life. Like, if you're making a track, and then you get onto a YouTube tutorial, and then you end up like watching Daily V for like 3 hours. It's like, like you knew what you were meant to be doing, but if you can train yourself to catch yourself in those moments. And I'll find myself going to the fridge, and I'll actually catch myself and be like, are you hungry or are you just bored? And 9 times out of 10, I'm just bored. So I'll be like, no, you can leave that food in the fridge. But that active attention training, and it has made my focus a hell of a lot better when I'm being productive, editing videos, making music, that kind of stuff. And that gave me like a practical reason to really invest in making meditation a habit.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the part where people think they're not doing it right. You hear that a lot.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know how to, I'm not doing it right, because you think it's supposed to be letting your mind go blank. I think that's like kind of the general conception of what meditation is. And I guess it's a little bit of that, but it's more, I think of it as more just observing what's happening in my mind.
Exactly.
And they say every time you catch that, that's the actual exercise. That's where the magic happens, is where the growth happens. Someone I was listening to was saying that's like the bicep curl, that's the actual move. And I'll tell you what, I had a real life experience probably an hour and a half ago. I was coming home from work, and I noticed this person was really riding up close on me from behind, and I'm like, why is this person driving so close to me? And I looked at my mirror, and I saw them like throw their hands in the air, like, what are you doing? Like, kind of thing.
Really?
And I was going slow because the person in front of me was making a left turn. So I kind of like, gut reaction, instant, without thinking. I kind of did this back to them, like, whoa, like, what am I supposed to do? And then, I kind of realized, all right, who's a stranger that's popped in my life for a second and it's going to be gone in 5 seconds. But this person was not gone in 5 seconds. I don't know what was going on with them, because like once I pulled away after this car made their left, there was a huge gap between me. Now I'm like, all right, well, how come you're not riding my butt now? And I noticed they were like, what they were doing was screwing with the person behind them, because they were going slow to mess with that person. And when that person went around him, he gave that person the finger, So,
oh my Lord.
And then like, I'm just like, wow, this person's like in a tirade, I could see all these hand gestures going on, and they were behind me again. And the person in front of me didn't start driving right away when the light changed, and they laid on their horn for a good, literally like 10 whole seconds.
Oh man.
And I'm just so glad that I was able to say like, hey, like this person is like just a fleeting moment in my day, and I'm not going to get sucked into that negativity. And I guess like driving is such a high stress thing that we're really easily set off. You see the dark side of the nicest people when they start driving. But it was kind of like that, like catch yourself, like, hey, this isn't what you want to get involved in. This is not how you want your day to go. This is not the direction you want. And what I actually did, I just pulled over like I was going to park, and I let that person go right past me. I was like, this person is gonna blow, that something's gonna give with this person, and I'm just gonna let them get away and do it somewhere else, because I got a podcast with John Holt today. I can't get involved with this. But that whole like catching yourself is huge. It's hard to do, because I didn't at first. I reacted like, hey, what do you want me to do? Had a classic New York traffic jam argument going.
That's no, it just makes total sense. Like I definitely like to think of it as clouds. Like if it's raining outside, it could be dingy as hell and like raining, and you're like, this sucks. But you never sat there thinking it's never going to be sunny again. It's like it's just passing.
Yeah.
And that applies to moods, that applies to feelings, that applies to all kinds of stuff. And I think the what you were saying about the bicep curl for the brain, I heard that too, and I think it was Dan Harris.
Okay, could be. He's
from the 10% happier stuff. Which,
yes, Dan Harris, the news reporter who had the panic attack on the air. It was like Good Morning America or something.
That's it. It's great. That, funny enough, that's actually what got me into meditation. Was Dan Harris and that book. that Audible book.
I got
But
to
yeah,
get
like
that. That's, there's so many things I want to read, and Audible, actually, I have the subscription, and I'm always trying to figure out what to get. But he's slipped through the cracks a few times, but I like him a lot. Yeah. But carry
he
on.
is.
I don't want to jump
No,
into that too much.
he's fantastic, and that's definitely something that I try and apply the clouds thing for sure. But yeah, like I completely like empathize with what you were saying about the traffic incident. Like you caught yourself quicker than most people would in that situation for sure. But I had a similar sort of thing. I was food shopping actually, like just before I came back to come on the podcast. Um, and there were like school had just got out and there were
Hmm.
so many kids about. I was like, mental note, don't come food shopping at this time again. Like I'll try and avoid this. Um, but like I got caught up in these like group of kids who I was like, their parents were nowhere to be seen. They were like flinging baskets about, and I got like hit with baskets, and they were running under my feet, and I was like, but I caught myself quicker than I ever have, and I was like, no, probably don't throw a cake at them. Just chill out, like go to a different thing. They're only kids, kind of thing. And I was like, it. It sounds like such a silly example because it's like, John, they're kids in a shop. Like, get over it. But you do get caught up in those kind of
Hmm.
moments, and like you do with traffic, like you do with little niggling things with a partner. It's like in the grand scheme of things, how much is this really going to matter? And I think weirdly, one of the things that's helped me the most with that has been another book that I read, which was um, indirectly from Tim Ferriss. So his latest book, Tribe of Mentals.
Yeah.
One of the most recommended books in that book was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Victor
Frankl.
Frankl, the Holocaust survivor. Yeah.
Exactly, and that that made me realize like dude, you have absolutely nothing to complain about.
Hmm.
Like he was waking up, like everyone that was involved in that like horrific time had it horrendously, and this guy Viktor Frankl like stayed so incredibly positive throughout all of it and developed a school of psychology around the way that he sort of coped with it. And um, that was just amazing to hear that no matter how like rough it gets, if you have something to cling onto, some sort of meaning, family, the work you're doing, like if there's a meaning for your suffering, pretty much that's what he teaches. Then you can endure pretty much anything as a human. And it's like that just made me realize, like, you know what, the water going out probably isn't that big a deal. Like I can shower at the gym, and what we think of as these big problems in the first world, it's like, yeah, just perspective has been hugely helpful for me in
Right.
that sense.
Yeah, and that's a serious perspective creator, and
Definitely.
it's moving that somebody can. It's just like this human spirit can triumph over some pretty incredible difficulties, and it's a great example. And it it is it's almost embarrassing sometimes when you think of like the things that upset you, the things that you stress over when you like just step back a little bit and think about what's really going on a bit, and it becomes
Definitely.
petty pretty quickly.
Definitely does. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even still, like but the traffic thing, my pot boiled over for a second there. There was a good couple seconds that are still like, you know, not my finest moments, but that's a big thing. And if we, I guess, and I love how so much of the philosophy of making music and just in life and how we live all connects on so
Mm,
many different levels. And like I think that's one of the really cool things about just like creating music or any sort of creative thing or anything that challenges you on some level, is that it all like becomes like strength again for the next time. The next time you got like a little bit of exercise in that, and you've practiced it, and you're able to apply that again when something comes up. And it's very easy to get frustrated in the studio when you're working on something and don't know what to do, or everything you just tried to do ruined your mix, which I've done so many times. But it's it's just getting past that. Every time you get past that, it's just, oh wow, I did that, and now you get to look back on all of those little triumphs you've had in the past.
Definitely. How do you think you coped with that frustration, or gradually sort of overcame it? Whether that's something you struggled more with as a beginner, or throughout, like when you get those moments where it's just like nothing is working here. Um, that'd be really interesting to hear. Actually, so I know it's your podcast, but no, I'd be really interested to hear what how you sort of cope with that.
Well, it's not like anything that's been conquered, and I think that's maybe something I've learned talking to a lot of people that, like people that I respect their work and I'm amazed by. I don't know how the hell they ever managed to put that together. Still say the same thing. They still get those moments, and I find that to be comforting, actually.
Yeah,
Whereas I could just as easily say, like, "Oh, damn it!" Like, and
yeah,
I'm never gonna get over this, you know. But I do find it comforting to know that, like, that's another person who maybe is, way further down the road than I am, and still encounter those things. And then when they come up for me, it's understood that that's part of the deal. As much as I love to make music and the fun I have, and I love to, listen to my mix the next day in the car and just enjoy it without saying I hate everything is great. Um, in order to get there, you have to go through some, difficult paths and big challenges. I think just that alone does help. Um, taking breaks too is huge. I think you have to kind of break that mental downfall, that kind of like roller coaster your mind gets on when something goes wrong, and then it's like, well, then the next thing goes wrong is even worse because the other thing went wrong, and then you just get in a destructive mood. And getting away from that is very important. Taking a break, knowing when to stop and just take a deep breath and move on, or leave. Just go for a walk, run, you know. I think those are really important things to do. And the answers, like you said, they're out there. People are sharing the answers. People have been through this before. So there are solutions out there, and you can go find them. Um, but at, at the same time, it's still very common. It comes up all the time, and it's difficult. And I always say that to people. Like, I was talking to this guy. I guess he's like 17, and he was saying he wanted to get into music, and I was encouraging him, but I was like, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is hard, but I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm just being real with you. It is hard, so be ready for that. If you're, because I mean, I have this like kind of feeling too. I want to encourage you. Yeah, you could definitely do it. You just keep working, you keep trying. It's not that bad, but the truth is, it is hard, and the hard part is the consistency. If you can just keep the consistency going, then it will come. But I don't want to like lie to anyone and tell them like, oh, this path is a smooth road. You're gonna be fine. No, it's hard, but just know that when it does get hard, that this is part of it.
definitely. I couldn't agree more with that, and it's reassuring to know that, like you say, that is something that people come up against even when they're much further down the road, and you look at their releases and you're like, yes, like that's what I choose to listen to, that's what I want to make, that's what I aspire to. But these guys don't just like sit in a studio and bang out a track in 2 hours and it's number one on Beatport. Like they struggle with this stuff as well. But I think it's so important to have a balanced view of that, like you say, when you're listening to your mix back in the car, and or in your bedroom or in the studio, and it's like, that sounds awesome. Like,
Mm.
for me, I absolutely love that. I had so much fun making it. When you get like even something as simple as like a little percussion hit in your drum loop that's like, oh yes, that is exactly what it needed. That gives it such a
Mm.
cool groove. There are so many little moments like that, to putting out a finished product. And even if I'm like going out with my friends and we're having a few drinks beforehand and we'll put some music on, and I'll like sometimes slide one of my tracks in there, just because what I want someone to do is go, oh, and like be like, what's this? Kind of like it lets me know that it's living up to what they expect to be played through a Spotify playlist. And I don't want anything to be mentioned. I just want it to like slide through unnoticed.
Can I get it away? Yeah.
Exactly. And then I know that it didn't like completely suck to the point where people were like, ugh, what was that? But if someone starts like tapping their head or like tapping out the rhythm that you like played in on the MIDI keyboard, it's like, that's really cool. Like people say like, I want people to sing my music back at me, or like everyone lose it in a club to this kind of drop. Or but it's those little moments as well. Like you don't get that from many places, but making something that's creative, that's all you, gives you such a buzz there. But there is that other side of the coin, which is it's not going to be easy. Nothing of value comes fast, and that's so true with music production. But if you approach it with the right mindset of this is going to be tough at times, but that's your due diligence, man. You've got to really put the work in to get anything of value out of it. But then once you have that mindset that you've developed around it, and you have those processes, and you have, I think, staying attached to your why. Like, why do you make music? Because I want to give people that feeling that I get at clubs with my friends when I hear an awesome dance track, and that's why I'm learning how to make like house and tech house to a higher level now. So when it gets tough and I've spent 3 hours in Serum tweaking a patch and it's just not doing what I want it to do, it's like, remember why you're doing this. Like, don't just go off and start watching YouTube videos. Like, persevere. There's a reason.
Well, I think you make a good point about really like hanging on to the little victories. You know, when the percussion part really gels with the drums, or when no one said, well, who the hell put this music on, when you slip your track in. You know, I mean, those are it's not always going to be fireworks and Grammys and, you know, hip hip hooray, you know, you're the best. It's very rarely ever going to be that, in all honesty. So to really appreciate those little victories is so important, because they don't come a lot. And to really, I guess, also make little victories, like understand like, hey, that part sounds cool together. Nice, you know?
Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, if this was easy, like you imagine like your favorite producers, you know, and then you watch like I love this, don't get me wrong. I love it's Against the Clock, Fact TV.
Okay.
Fact Magazine, or Fact, I think they call it Fact TV on YouTube, but they give the producer 10 minutes to make a track.
Oh, awesome.
And sometimes it's people you know, sometimes it's not, but and sometimes it comes out really good, and sometimes it's like, okay, whatever, you know, that's forgettable or whatever. But sometimes it really does, it just looks like, well, this person just, you know, wakes up and scratches his rear end and a track comes out, you know. But if it was easy, there'd be no value to it. There'd be no point, and I don't think we'd enjoy it as much. I mean, that's why I don't play basketball against 4-year-olds for fun, you know, because I know I could school them pretty good, even on my worst days, you know. But why? What's the point, you know?
I can see like an Instagram quote there. That is probably the best way I've ever heard it described as to why it's not, why it doesn't mean anything if it's easy. Sorry, I interrupted.
That's all right. I mean, that's the whole point, I guess. But it's easy to forget that too, you know. And I think if it didn't suck sometimes, it wouldn't be as good when it gets good.
No, that definitely makes sense, and that's something that is quite hard to learn. But once you do get into that mindset, like you can become literally unstoppable if you're unfazed by the fact that you had like a bad session or a bad week of making music. If you're unfazed by that and you go in with the attitude of like, I'm showing up, Stephen Pressfield's like,
yeah,
I'm showing up, I'm opening up shop, and if it's going to happen for me, it's going to happen. Like, as long as you're enjoying doing it, and as long as you have a reason why you want to be doing it, whether it's just expression, whether it's um, wanting to get to the next level of your career, which extrinsic motivators obviously aren't the ideal things to be focusing on, but um, there are definitely intrinsic things that go along with that, like people enjoying what you make and you enjoying what you make, and that kind of thing. Then you can definitely go a long way with that kind of mentality, for sure.
Yeah, I've heard writers, and maybe it was Stephen Pressfield even, but just saying like, I don't care if it's good or bad. I have to write, 5,000 words today. End of story.
Mhm.
Like, and that's just it.
Yeah,
And that's the goal. It's not what happens, it's the goal. And I mean, I think most people, if they do that, will think about ways to improve it and modify their process to make everything better and all of that kind of stuff. But it's that internal conquering the goal kind of thing. It's the practice of it, and I think that's like, I think you get a lot of that understanding too if you are someone that likes to exercise or train in a sport or even a martial art or anything. Like, it's not always just the outcome. It's the process. It's the training. It's the just going through the motions and showing up where a lot of it happens. And it's it's a good thing to just make those your motivators. It's always nice to have the external gratification. Someone says, "Hey, good job, high five, here's all my money," whatever you want it to be, that external thing. But you don't have the control over those things. And if that is your marker of success, I think inevitably you're going to be upset and disappointed and frustrated.
definitely. And something that really teaches that in quite a direct way is a branch of philosophy called Stoicism, Stoic philosophy. It's if you focus on things that are outside your control for happiness, for validation, like that's a quick route to unhappiness because it's outside your control.
Yeah.
And I find myself asking that myself a lot on a daily basis, like, is this inside my control or is it outside my control? If not, let it go. If it is, you can do something about that. And that's something that, God, this has just been one big book recommendation. But Ryan Holiday, who has written some awesome books on that. The obstacle is the way, the ego is the enemy. And I'm not currently reading, but is in my never-ending list, the Daily Stoic, which I think is a really valuable sort of philosophy trend, and I think a trend or school of philosophy, and it's what Tim Ferriss calls the ultimate operating system for thriving in high stress environments. So, and the world is a high stress environment at the moment, so I think it's valuable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think, and I love both those books. Obstacle is the way, and Ego is the enemy are ones I've that have been on my Audible playlist before, and they're great, and they're just again just a nice thing to think about. Facing the challenges, that's what you have to do. You have to face the challenge. That's how you build muscle if you're working out. You don't do it lifting 3 pounds all day long. You have to make your muscles be at the edge of their ability. That's where the growth happens. And it's the same thing with making music. It's the same thing with everything. And I do think like they say the world is a high stress environment. I think we make it a high stress environment, even because in our cushy, comfortable lives, I'm not worrying about starving today, all these things, but I'll find another problem. That person driving behind me today really got to me, like you said, I'm out of, Cocoa Pebbles and I really wanted some, and now I'm stressed. You know what I mean? Like, we'll find things to upset us. And those philosophies are really helpful to deal with that, because stress is relative, right? If you're stressed, what does that mean? It's just some comparison to something else, and I love this comparison I heard, like a little baby, a little kid, toddler, has a toy and you take the toy away from them and it's the end of the world to that toddler.
Hmm.
And you're like, come on, it's just a toy. What are you crying about? But to that kid, it's not. It's the end of the world, literally. That is the worst thing that could have happened to that kid in their limited experience. And it's just how we are, I guess. And it's probably good because it probably motivates us to do things and change things and actually get up and not just settle for whatever it is we have.
Definitely. And it's something that Tony Robbins touched on, actually. Like, your brain's such an old organ and it's always looking for what's wrong or what's dangerous. And that's how we've stayed alive. And that's how
Right.
we've evolved into what we are. But there's no saber-toothed tiger now. There's nothing
Yeah.
chasing us. Like, but our brain is still finding these things to pick up on. And it's a weird story that I haven't shared before, actually. I had a dream recently that kind of made this hit home for me. And it really kind of shook me. So I had this dream that I was with my family and I was in a country that resembles something like Syria. And I was in a war zone. And like, my fears during that dream were like my family's life and my own safety. And then I woke up and I was like, I'm in my student halls in a bed and it's warm. And like, even as a student, I've got food in the fridge and like, I'm good. But that is how some people, well, a lot of people are living it. It's like, I'm in my final year, in my final like 5 weeks of university at the moment. So like, deadlines are coming pretty thick and fast. And my course mates, understandably, are quite stressed. And I was walking back up today. I was like, I'm genuinely not stressed whatsoever. And that's not because I'm going to get better grades, because I'm not. It's just that I'm set to get average grades. I'm happy with that. I can do what I need to do. And like, looking in 5 years' time, is it going to matter? No. Then let go of it within the next 5 minutes. That's kind of something I've been trying to do. But yeah, you're definitely right. It's relative, and if you can change what you're comparing, like that dream, like whatever, then you can really change the way that you view your current situation for the better.
Right. That's a great point. I kind of say something similar to the high school seniors I teach. So they're the 12th graders. They're about to go into the world. They have to decide on college. A lot of them get really stressed out. It's a big moment in your life. You have to actually make some decisions about what you're going to do and where you're going to go. And you're not just on the conveyor belt, just sitting there, letting the society churn you out. Like, now it's time to get off and step. And they get really stressed. But I like to point out to them, like, what you're really stressed about is actually just opportunity. You're faced with opportunity now. There's a lot of older people in the building right now that would love to trade places with you, to start again, to try it over, with all those options that, may have closed off on them as they've gotten older. It's a sort of almost like the paralysis by too many choices kind of thing. And it's the stress of really just a lot of potential and a lot of opportunities and just not knowing which one to decide on. And I think reframing it like that is important, because they're put under a lot of stress by themselves, by their parents, by their counselors, and everybody, the teachers are all trying to, push them off the conveyor belt, I guess. But it's an opportunity, really, if you just kind of change your perspective a little bit.
No, it must be a really exciting position for you to be in, to be able to just shake them and say, like, this, you are in such a good like time of your life. And you sound like genuinely optimistic for them, and that has to rub off if you're making them stress out about, like, you need to pick a college, like, you need to make sure you get into a good one, or like, if you don't have that, make sure you've got something else that's good lined up. Like, no, like, that sounds like you're coming out from, I wish I had someone like that tell me that when I was 16 or 18, and just say, like, there's so much you can do now. Just go out and explore, not like make sure you get into a good university or make sure you know what you want to do kind of thing.
Well, you'd be surprised how hard it is to actually shake them and
Yeah,
just get them to listen to you. Just pay attention for like
exactly.
1 minute. Because you can't actually shake them.
No, that would
um,
probably get
but yeah,
severe.
it is. It is, and I think too, like it doesn't just go away when you're 18, though. Um, in reality, we have tons of opportunity and choice, and even if it might be difficult to kind of put the car of life in reverse and backtrack and start again at something, you can still do it. And
Mm.
you know, a few years from now, then like you said, what's it going to matter? You'll be further down that road instead of like just wondering about it or whatever. But we do have a lot more power to change than I think we give ourselves credit for. Because we get stuck in things. I feel it now more than ever in my life. A little stuck. I'm, uh, you know, got a house with my wife. It's like every paycheck is like, oh, thank God,
Yeah,
thank God that came in. Like,
definitely.
um, but look, if it really got that bad, we could, if we really had to, drop it all, sell, start over somewhere else if we really had to. We're not going to die. Tim Ferriss, to bring him up again, obviously we are like paying attention to a lot of the same people and books
Mhm.
and things. But I love his like fear setting strategy that he does, and
Mm,
he's got a great TED
yeah.
talk on that. What's the worst that could happen? And in his book, The 4 Hour Work Week, which was a big book for me, it really
Mhm.
inspired me in a lot of ways. He's so funny the way he's like, imagine the worst that's going to happen, and he takes you, you're on the streets, you're starving, and then a dog bites you. He like just, and when you put it in like the reality, it is like, what's going to happen really? Like, you're going to be okay for the most part.
Exactly.
It might be tough, but how hard would it really be to get back to where you were anyway? Um, you know,
Exactly.
Probably wouldn't
And
be much more than time to get back there.
that's it. You got more of a safety net than you think, and that's something that again Gary's a huge advocate of, and has been pushing quite a lot recently in his content. Because I think a lot of people do come up to him and say like, I've got this job, I've got this mortgage, I've got these two kids, like I can't be doing this thing on the side. Um, but there is always an easier job or something that isn't going to take up as much of your time, and you do have more time. Like stop watching Lost or
Yeah.
whatever Gary normally says, and I definitely align with that for sure.
He had a good bit. I don't know if it's just a short Instagram video or something, but where he was gonna start a show called So What or End or something like that. And his thing was
Yeah.
like, oh, but Gary, I can't do it because, I was abused as a child. And he's like, so, and, like, I mean, he's throwing out some like pretty harsh things, oh,
Yeah.
my father doesn't think I can do it. My mom doesn't believe me. He's like, and
Hmm.
so it's like it's a great thing to think about because you always hear stories of people. I mean, like Stephen Hawking just passed away. I mean, look at the difficult card he was dealt in life and what he did with it anyway.
Yeah.
And you almost have to wonder if something like that wasn't almost like the fire he needed to really say, like, you know what, F it. I'm going through with this anyway. Because you see that happen in a
Absolutely.
lot of people where like, I mean, you can either let that be the thing that breaks you and no one would blame you. Everyone would be like, yeah, man, that's a shit hand you were dealt. Sorry, I understand. You're angry at the world and whatever. But
Hmm.
um to then just take that and be like, well, guess what? Now I'm really going for it. It's and there's countless examples of people that have done that throughout history, and um, it sometimes you wonder if almost that's like almost the requirement,
Yeah.
Maybe like I need something bad to happen, but in seriousness, like that is powerful, to know that. Um, and his message was he's being kind of funny about it on his little video there, but it's true. Like, yeah, that wasn't fair. You were treated unfair, and this happened, and that wasn't right either. And yeah, that your studio, all your equipment got destroyed in the flood and whatever. But so now what? And now what? And and it just puts you again in that position of power. Like, okay, you're right. Now I'm not the victim anymore. As soon as you let that be the reason, you're the victim, and instead of the person in control of the situation.
That's it. You really can regain control of that. And like Oprah had a horrendous time growing up,
Oh
and like
God, yeah.
so did so many other like of these famous people. And I think you definitely do see like a chip in the shoulder of a lot of those kind of successful people and people coming out of like Harvard with MBAs, and they just don't have that drive really or that grit.
Mm.
And it's like Elon Musk, like I didn't go to Harvard, but the people that work for me did. And
That's
it's
funny. Yeah.
you definitely you do see it, people coming from all walks of life obviously going on to be successful, but there's definitely something in that for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true, and I think we can tap into that without that those unfortunate circumstances. But
Mm.
um, yeah, let that be the reason. Then, if that's the reason you're not going to do something, let it be the reason you do something.
There we
Mm.
are. I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been awesome to talk to you. I think I'm gonna have like more show notes on this episode than like anything I've done in the past because we hit on so many like really good resources and different things that have helped me a lot. Things I want to check out that you mentioned too, that I think will be really useful for people going through it. Um, Before we go, is there anything on the future horizon for you? Any plans you got? I know you got some heavy work coming up in the next few weeks with school. But what's on the horizon for you, John?
What was it say? Say the main thing that I'm focusing on at the moment is continuing to grow the channel, and I'm
Mhm.
really like tapping in and listening, trying to find out what people want there. And my direction for 2018 is being more raw and honest, showing the side of me that really does struggle with music production, not just like I know how to do this in Ableton and I'm going to show you. It's more like
Mhm.
I tried to do this, it failed, but I still do get these results, which people are like, yeah, that's what I want. You can still have that. You're still going to get this kind of things. Being a bit more raw and honest going forwards on the channel. Um, Moving into uh, teaching online courses. So I'm going to be doing like Ableton courses, and then more sort of holistic music production courses going forward as I sort of learn and grow myself, sort of share what I know, um, send the ladder back down to where I was a few years ago, carry on going up and just rinse and repeat. Really, that's the plan for the foreseeable future.
Nice. That sounds good to me. I definitely do appreciate the honesty part.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, I'm looking at your channel right now. It's funny. I didn't see this video yet, but you got the screenshot. I feel like a fraud, and that's
Mm.
kind of what I was saying about like myself being an adult, fake
Dude,
adult kid.
imposter syndrome is so real in like in so many areas. Like you say, it's definitely not just something in music production. That video is specifically me talking about it in relation to music production. And
Hmm.
as I grew a bit of a following, I was like, but I'm still having these days where like I just can't do anything. I can't make anything. Nothing goes right, and you do feel like an imposter. But as I mentioned in there, it's that's fine. It's like it's part of the process
Yeah.
for sure.
I go through that feeling too. And as when I got started putting content online, I was making Ableton Live instruments, but I didn't really know how to use Ableton Live. I knew how to use the sampler. I knew how to make a
Okay.
couple instrument racks. My sort of like understanding of the program came along with just the consistency of using it, and now I feel pretty confident saying I know it. I can
Mhm.
pretty much tell you how to do just about anything for the most part. Although I'm always open to learn. I think that's important.
Mhm.
But um, it it was like kind of a feeling I dealt with a lot because like sometimes people just assume you know what you're talking about just because you're talking about it. But
Yes.
I think to have like the courage to say like I don't know, I'm not sure, I have to learn that is really good and important. And I think the honesty thing is great because um, it's it's real, and I think it's nice to learn from someone that is real with you, and like, because you can relate to that. And I think it's important to get comfortable with your teachers too, like where
Mm.
you don't have to feel like you're pretending to be something you're not. So I think that's a great direction. I like that a lot. And I think the podcast has helped me get to that myself. Just because if I'm gonna be running my mouth for this many hours over and over, it's gonna come out anyway. So yeah, I do try to embrace that a little bit. Just like I am what I am. It said Popeye the Sailor Man, right?
That's it. No, it definitely comes through, and that really does come through in the podcast that you do and the people that you speak to, and I'm sure that's helped like thousands and thousands of people that have listened. So yeah, thank you for sharing that kind of thing.
Well, I'm glad to have you on to help contribute to that big project that it is the music production podcast.
There we are.
Cool. So, if where do you like to tell people to go to first? And you say, "Hi, I'm John. I what where would you say they should go first? Is it your website, the YouTube?"
Awesome. So it's pretty much just my channel at the moment. If
Mm.
that's something that people would be interested in, then it's just the audio journey. And yeah, I've got an email list which you get through grabbing the ebook that came with the 7 key elements of music production. I'm going to be making some more content to sort of build up lists around things that people will be interested in. So when I come out with a more advanced thing, I'll be building up a list around that. I don't want to just sort of get that kind of stuff for no reason. So yeah, YouTube is definitely the best place to find me. I'm launching a podcast myself soon.
Oh, nice.
So that's going to be really good fun. And yeah, the channel is definitely my hub for now, which will be expanding soon. But yeah, that's going to be the best place to find me if you'd be interested in doing so.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good stuff for anyone listening. There's some really nice, wide variety too. You have your like super beginner stuff, which is nice because I do think that's hard for people to find. And I know myself when I work with real beginners, like I never made music before. I don't even know that there are notes and bars and beats. Those
Mhm.
types of beginners really do need to be represented a little bit, and it's you forget how much you take for granted that that you've picked up along the way, and you do a nice job in helping them with that. And that the seven principles is a really nice opening, and that audiobook is really straightforward, and it's humble. It's like, hey, take it with a grain of salt. I like that attitude.
Mm.
But you cover a lot of cool things, a lot of different devices, DAWs. So I think it's a lot of people can find a lot of good things there.
Fantastic. No, I really appreciate it. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Cool. Well, John, thank you so much. We will say our goodbyes to everybody. This has been a talk with John Holt of the Audio Journey. It's just youtube.com/the Audio Journey.
That's right.
We can find it that way.
That's right.
Okay, great. So that's it. youtube.com/the Audio Journey. Definitely check it out. Lots of great, helpful material. And thanks again, John, for being on.
No, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for all the listeners.
Cool. Take care, everybody.